a sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published.
For years, Bill Gates has been the spokesman for worldwide pandemics and mass vaccination campaigns. He has gone on record many times saying that the world was not ready for the next pandemic.
We're not ready for the next epidemic. We're not ready for a serious epidemic, an epidemic that would be more infectious and would spread faster than Ebola did.
Whistleblowers have decided to come forward so that the public can know the truth.
Yeah, I have worked in the medical field for over 30 years, all in Utah, mostly intensive care, and in all areas of intensive care. Every time I'm there, basically every day something is changing. Some new policy, some new...
Is that a mandate, or is that coming from...
mandates from the company that we as nurses need to follow.
Yeah.
And many of them don't make any medical sense. Every time I'm there, I find out something new, and it just blows my mind that such rational, educated people are acting in such an irrational way, and harm is being done. Care of patients, real quality care, nursing care and medical care of patients who have nothing to do with this COVID, who are there for, is being compromised. 100%.
Wow.
We all know it. All of the nurses, all the doctors know it. But our hands are tied. You speak reason and you try and reason, and basically what it is do what you're told. Act, react, don't stop and think about this logically, just do. It is not based on sound medical logic. It's not. We can't disclose this technically to anyone, or you're breaking federal law. You can say there are COVID patients being admitted for COVID, but they're considered COVID until it's ruled out. Once they're ruled out, they don't say, oh, never mind, scratch that number. The number stays. You basically treat the patient as if they have it until you find out that they don't.
I'm a nurse practitioner. I am licensed and certified. I am not on the front lines. I have a friend in New York City who's on the front lines. And for her safety, she cannot come out and say these things. So I am her voice. I'm not going to name names of people or hospitals for the safety of those involved. But this is her account, okay? I am her voice here. I'm going to tell you what she has told me. She wants this to get out. New York City right now, in some of the hospitals, this is what is going on. People are sick, but they don't have to stay sick. They are killing them. They are not helping them. She used the word murder, coming from a nurse who went to New York City expecting to help. Patients are left to rot and die. Her words. She has never seen so much neglect. No one cares. They are cold and they don't care anymore. It's the blind leading the blind. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was on with some nurse friends of mine, and we were discussing different medications that could be used to potentially help people. Doctors who were reporting around the country that they were using a combination of medications that were helping people. People were not dying when they were on these medications, they were getting better. Those medications are not being used in hospitals in New York City. What is happening is that they're putting people on nasal cannula. If they require more than 6 liters of nasal cannula, they get intubated, they go on the vent, or they get trached if there's not enough vents. They don't get high flow, no non-rebreather, no non-invasive ventilation, no CPAP, no.
Well, the coronavirus story continues to unfold in a very predictable way. We've now reached the point where Donald Trump, the US president, has announced a ban on flights between America and European countries, not including the UK, for the next 30 days. And very extreme measures are being taken in Italy, where they have what seems to me to be a more virulent strain of this coronavirus, this COVID-19, than many other parts of the world. I'll get into that as we go along. But of course, it's so predictable, and was from the start, that it was going to be a frenzy of draconian measures unfolding step by step. Now, people might say, and it's completely understandable, well, what else can they do? Well, there might be some truth in that, yes. If this is a virulent virus, and it doesn't seem to be the same, like I've just said, everywhere, then measures need to be taken to deal with it, yes. The point is, though, that those draconian measures are justified by governments because of the virus. And so anyone looking dispassionately at this needs to ask the question, who benefits from this virus appearing and breaking out? And it's anyone that wants to introduce draconian measures. And as with all of these things, when they introduce more authoritarian systems to respond to a situation, whatever it is, what tends to happen is when that situation is dying down and disappearing, that not all of the measures introduced also get rolled back to how they were before. So there's a movement, there's a draconian, a tyrannical movement forward as a result of the situation, in this case, a virus. And I can see many things coming, including technological testing for people ongoing. Oh, we need to introduce this now as a matter of course. And more and more freedom gets deleted. So it's not a kind of a debate primarily on, okay, we need to do this because of the virus. The focus, I feel, should be on, well, all roads in terms of more authoritarian imposition lead back to the virus. And so where did the virus come from? And we can't say for certain about that. I think there's a very good chance that different strains of the virus are actually being released in different places, and that not all of it is coming out of China. And we come back to this simple question: who benefits? And it's an ancient concept, which I think goes back at least to ancient Rome, of he who benefits from a crime is the one most likely to have committed it. So he who benefits from the virus is the one most likely to have released it. And I would say we need to go beyond China or America or Israel or any of these places in terms of it's the Communist Party in China that released this, it's the who released this, etc. Because when you see the world as it is really directed and manipulated, it's a global web run by a global cult, as I call it, which has multiple faces in country after country after country. This cult absolutely controls China. China is its blueprint for the world. And it also controls the government of America, of Britain, etc. Not by just having its 100% agents as prime ministers and ministers. The vast majority of those people won't even know there's a cult. It's in manipulating situations which people in government who are ignorant of the background and the forces that are driving the direction of the world will then respond to the situations you create in ways that change society in the ways that you want. And of course, in there, among the ignorant, will be agents of this cult, not least in areas of permanent government, like government administration and so on, rather than here today, gone tomorrow politicians, although they will be involved as well. But the number compared with the totality of politicians will be tiny who are in full knowledge. You've only got to watch a debate in the Houses of Parliament or on Capitol Hill to see the ignorance, but there will be people in there who absolutely know what's going on and support it. Either way, the problems that are created by this cult and its agents are then there to be responded to. And we're seeing the response now, incredibly predictable to this virus, which absolutely suits the ambitions of this cult to push the world further and further and further into a global Orwellian fascistic state under the name technocracy. We're past the point where we're looking at the imposition of classic fascism or the imposition of classic Marxism, communism, although the outcome for the people is the same. We moved it on into this technocracy, which was the plan all along. And a technocracy is a society that is run and controlled by, quote, experts and scientists and engineers and bureaucrats. I mean, the European Union is a classic technocracy in terms of its bureaucratic control by unelected people. And the target is democracy itself, because a technocracy does not do elected people. It does appointed people to run the system as they see fit, or as that in the shadows sees fit via them. And so democracy has to go. And what we're seeing more and more are attacks on democracy. And it's very easy to discredit the concept of elected government when you just ensure that your system keeps turning out corrupt and clueless politicians. Because by definition, if you put those in charge, they are going to make a pig's ear of it. I don't know why that is a metaphor, but it is pig's ear for chaos and incompetence. But anyway, the whole thrust is destruction of democracy. And what you're seeing are surveys coming out, sometimes big surveys around the world, by the usual suspects, saying that the population is losing confidence in democracy, which is exactly where this needs to go. Now, if you play this out in terms of the coronavirus, you have seen the reaction eventually of the Chinese technocracy, because that's what it is already. That's why it's a blueprint for the world. In terms of extreme measures of lockdown, of pulling people off the streets, of pulling people out of their homes, and so much more. I'll come to some of it in a second. And then you've got the democratic world, which has not yet responded in that extreme way, though we're starting to move that way in Italy, but and Iran to an extent as well. And those two countries are significant. I'll come to that. And you can see a scenario of psychological manipulation in which China dealt with the virus, quote, successfully, if that's how it turns out, and they're claiming it is at the moment, because of these authoritarian extremes, whereas it wasn't sorted out in the West because of democratic freedom concepts and responses. And if this virus goes on expanding, and of course the hyping of the fear of the virus alongside it, then of course you're going to see support more and more for a suspension of democracy to meet the problem of the virus. So you can see this whole attack on democracy taking a step forward as a result of this virus, which I do not believe for 1 second occurred naturally. So if we go to this first story about China, it says, surprise, China is using COVID-19 to strengthen its mass surveillance of citizens. Well, that was always going to happen. Mentioned it in a video I did with Gareth, 2 weeks ago now, that this is how it works. And of course, following on from that, more and more step by step, the West is going to follow. We're already seeing it. So this story says, and like I say, if this virus is circulating and it is as dangerous as they claim, then of course measures need to be taken to mitigate that. Of course, but I come back to it. Those measures become justifiable by government because of the virus. So where did the virus come from? That's the key. So this story says, as a result of monitoring for coronavirus, the Chinese government is now requiring Chinese citizens to provide personal data, including travel and health conditions, via apps on their smartphone to the government. This is the emerging smart grid control system, which is very much more advanced in China. Based on the answers that citizens give to the apps provided by these organizations, algorithms will try to decide whether or not the person is likely to have coronavirus. So you see that more power all the time is being given to artificial intelligence, which, as I've said for so long, is designed to be the control system of the world. The apps then assign a red, yellow, or green code to the person, depending on their risk of having the virus. If you get a red code, you have to self-quarantine or be quarantined in a facility for 14 days. And citizens can't lie because all the answers they provide about things like hotel stays and travel are cross-checked by AI with the government's data and smartphone location data. Several provinces also have social credit systems where people who lie, as well as smoke, jaywalk, and do anything the government doesn't want them to do, lowers their social credit scores, for which there are consequences. Like millions of Chinese people have been banned from flying and banned from train travel because their credit score has fallen. Their social credit score has fallen. So the story goes on. It all rounds out a picture of Beijing increasing its mass surveillance over its citizens. The surveillance can be effective, as China has supposedly shown during the outbreak, but people must also consider how the surveillance can be weaponized to combat mass protests and individual pursuits of justice. Well, of course, one of the things that's happening is that gatherings of people are being banned in more and more countries. And the story continues, the technology-based anti-outbreak measures are certainly needed now, it says. They have allowed over 10 million people to assess their risk of the coronavirus in this Chinese province he's talking about. The technology being used is in over 200 cities. And in Shanghai, an app is monitoring 245,000 street front shops with data, which eliminates the need for staff to visit them. The technology will help in indicating where the outbreak slows for certain, but there is little transparency, it says, on how Beijing collects the data and what happens to it. One low-level official said, through data analysis, we have mastered the trajectory of everyone's whereabouts. If you have not reported truthfully, our system will find out. So again, we're back to this question, who benefits? Well, just looking at that situation in China, who benefits is blatantly obvious. And it's playing out now across the world outside China, step by step. And you're going to hear people saying, officialdom saying, critics saying, oh, if only we'd have dealt with it like China did, which all is part of this psychological game that's happening. So the more that this coronavirus situation unfolds, the more and more painfully obvious it is that this virus did not happen naturally, but has been created and circulated for reasons of justifying more and more control, which when eventually the virus is, starts to fade in its impact, many of these measures will not be rolled back.
The cities are going to be laced with smart meters, smart poles, 5G, and whatever comes after, 6G, 7G, 8G. People are going to be tracked from the cradle to the grave with microchip implants that digitally store everything there is to know about them, including their finances and their ability to make transactions. That's why I tend to think that the microchip might be the mark of the beast. It says no one can buy or sell unless they have the mark. People all over the world are doing experimental microchipping. Not to mention what's happening now with ID 2020. We're also moving towards a cashless society with every day that passes. This pandemic is carrying multiple agendas forward. The push for centralized control of information, which is censorship and narrative control. The cashless agenda forming out of the economic crash taking place right now, and the fear of passing germs through the use of physical money. Martial law quarantines, mandatory vaccination, and digital identification via microchipping. This situation is the biggest show of force and seizure of power that anyone alive today has ever seen in their lifetime. This is very serious. Life is not going back to normal ever again. It truly is the end of the world as we know it. We need to take a stand. Refuse forced vaccines. Destroy 5G technology any chance we get, and don't let them fill you up with fear. From what I gather, they lose in the end anyway. You know, I really hope that's true. And this life is only temporary, so don't be scared. Be strong and stand up for yourselves. I know one thing for sure, I'll die or be thrown in a FEMA camp, or worse, before going along with what they're doing right now. Maybe you should consider doing the same thing. This has been ODD. Never sleep again, my friends. Take care.
So this is where the microchip implant story begins.
You will be chipped, it's just a matter of time. A small firm recently embedded microchips in their employees as a way to bypass company badges and corporate logons and to get attention for their cafeteria kiosks, which are available on a cashless payment plan like Apple Pay.
The latest office innovation is a microchip implanted in the skin and designed to replace the traditional keypad for opening doors, using the copier, even buying food in the cafeteria.
Employees at a vending company are going from the assembly line to front of the pack to get microchipped.
Do you think this is the future?
It is the future, and we look at this as being responsible.
The implant, which has been FDA approved, is the size of a grain of rice and is injected under the skin between the thumb and index finger by a licensed piercer.
I think it's the wave of the future that we'll all have implanted chips that have our medical records.
So you would do it?
Sure.
Okay.
You're carrying around a phone anyway.
This is a microchipping party. Hannah's getting an electronic chip implanted into her hand.
So congratulations, Hannah.
Thank you.
You've been chipped?
Yes, I have.
How does it feel?
It feels good. I'm excited to see what I'll be able to do now.
Can I touch it?
Yeah, you can feel it there. I feel like this is the future. It's the next big thing that's going to happen.
A tiny microchip like this inserted just beneath the skin in their hands.
This technology will, one day, change the way we live. But in the future, we will all be chipped.
In Sweden, the microchips are already here.
The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards,
which have made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden.
No cash.
Is a cashless society inevitable? How long will it take before we're cashless?
Many countries are fast moving towards a cashless society.
Between 2000 and 2015, non-cash payments in the U.S. grew by almost 400%. Venmo, the mobile app where people can pay each other on a smartphone, now processes $2 billion a month. This year, Apple added similar payment capabilities in iMessage. These free services are so popular, 30 major banks recently launched a competing product called Zelle.
It would be better if we were more like Sweden, where cash has nearly been phased out. And the U.S. will get there too in another 5 or 10 years.
There's no question that cash, is in its last era.
China's cashless revolution has happened in just 3 years.
In order to avoid the risk of transmission through physical handling of money, we encourage the use of cashless transactions, such as mobile money, M-Pesa and otherwise, and credit cards.
Well, health experts say the coronavirus can live on surfaces like cash for up to 10 days. That has many people worried about shopping and other everyday tasks.
The standard narrative in society is that cashlessness, quote-unquote cashlessness, is a sort of organic process just percolating from the bottom up by ordinary individual people who are just sort of making these organic decisions to switch to this other thing, right? Now this is pure, if you want to, this is a pure, to put it crudely, capitalist ideology, corporate capitalist ideology, where essentially you always want to focus attention on the small person in society, quote unquote, the consumer. All right, the sort of like random person who wanders around in markets who apparently controls what's going on in the world. All right. Of course, if you actually go and ask any person in society how much agency do you believe that you had in the emergence of this technology, almost nobody believes they had anything to do with the emergence of the technology. All right. What actually happens is that large-scale institutions push the stuff onto you for various commercial reasons and various other reasons. And the large-scale institutions love to disguise themselves and just never talk about themselves as if they're just not there. All right. So the story about the war on cash is a bunch of us who are trying to say, actually, over the last few decades, large-scale institutions, banks, payments companies, governments have all been actively eroding the cash system to slowly make it more and more likely that you're going to quote-unquote choose to go to the digital systems. Okay. Now you might believe that you're choosing this, but actually the whole environment is being structured in a way that makes you more and more likely to do it.
The biblical entry point for any discussion of the one world economic system, a cashless society, and end-time prophecy is Revelation 13:16 to 18. He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the freemen and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one should be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. The Bible clearly links the global mark of the beast system with the emergence of a cashless society.
One world government, a new global economy ruled by one man is coming. The banking overlord is coming. And he'll have a solution that everyone will indeed, quote, bow down to, end quote, and he's called Antichrist. And he will have his mark. He will do this for increased control of commerce. It will be perfect and complete control. His economic policy is very simple. Take my mark and worship me or starve. No mark, no merchandise. No seal, no sale. So if you want to function in this new economy under this coming world leader, you have to take the mark.
I just want to live and dream, but nothing is as what it seems. And baby, it's making me crazy. I just want to fight and scream. There's nothing left for me to say. Fear shot to defeat the day. I know that I can control it, so it doesn't have to be this way.
I refuse to just go quietly into the night. There's forces of darkness at work and they're restricting the light. I'm so fed up with the lies they tell us, this isn't right. It's ODD TV, you best believe I'll get up and fight. This is my plight, I'll never let you cowards get the best of me. Took the red pill, now it's time to fulfill my destiny. Living like I'm Neo, dipping from my P.O.